On this episode of Still Loading, boy! Oh, wait, that's the wrong game. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Still Loading. We are back with the summer of PS2. That is right, we are continuing on with this series of covering a shitload of PS2 games over the course of the whole summer. And this one today is a classic. I'm your host, Josh Koval, with you as always. And today I have invited my friend Greg on. Greg, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Josh.
Thank you for coming on to the podcast. So as with every guest that I have on this, I want to ask, how did you first find the PS2, or what was your first earliest memory of the PS2 or first experience that you can remember, or favorite experience?
Well, we had a PlayStation 1. My oldest brother had a PlayStation 1, and the PS2 came out, 2000?
2000, yeah. It was in 2000.
And so my parents figured, you have a system, you're done, right?
Yeah.
And then my oldest brother lobbied. And
it's
then
a classic childhood thing. You just convince your parents to buy it for you.
Yep. So it was actually I have two older brothers, and my oldest brother is significantly older than us, but he went in with my parents to buy me and my brother a PlayStation 2 for Christmas, and that was like
so he could also use it too,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
I know that.
He's a gamer.
I did the same thing. My brother wanted a Wii U, so I went in on half with my mom, so I could play the Wii U as well. Lo and behold, like years later, I now own one of my own, but still,
yeah,
I like the logic.
So it's Christmas. We're opening all the presents and stuff like that. We finish all the presents, and we're like, all right, awesome. No PS2. We're not bratty kids, so we weren't like crying about it or anything. And then my parents did a very Christmas Story thing. If you remember the movie where he's like, "Oh, what's that behind the thing?" They hid the PlayStation 2 like underneath a little table in the living room that we had, and my brother Vin and I just flipped the fuck out. Like we were like, "Oh my god!" I forget which games we had. We had that came with it. It was maybe like a motocross game or something like that that had come with it. But I think they bought the system, 2 controllers, and 2 or 3 games. It was a Madden game, probably a football game that came with it, and it was just like that's all we did for
the rest of the day.
Yeah,
and
that's all we did for the next 6 years. So
that's awesome. I love hearing those stories, man, because like it's part of the reason I even do this show. I've said it 1,000 times. Is like video game nostalgia. It's so palpable with so many people, and it crosses so many like lines and so many different like generations and like cultures and stuff like that. It's just I love hearing the nostalgia behind it.
Well, me and my brother were homeschooled, so we had tons of time to just
I didn't even think
game.
about that. I forgot you were homeschooled.
Yeah, so we had all this time to game, and we would get our schoolwork done in 4 or 5 hours, and then we had all day to just play, right? So I'd be playing a game for 4 or 5 hours, and then my brother would want to play, and I would just watch him play, So we would spend all day. It was a massive part of my childhood, especially on the PlayStation, because we didn't have an Xbox. We didn't really PC game or anything like that. We were strictly PlayStation people. I'm still a PlayStation person, and I need to get a PS4. So
right before the PS5 comes out. Good time.
As I'm trying to get it on the low end of it.
I actually got an original Xbox right before the 360 came out.
Oh,
literally,
really?
Like, I think it was like the same year the 360 came out was when
this
I finally
Xbox?
Yes, actually, that Xbox that you're looking at right now. So I'm happy to have you on, because the only other time you've been on the podcast prior to this was when I did Still Loading Storytime, where we did the dramatic readings of video game manuals. So it's awesome to have you on for an official episode and not just doing voice bits.
Oh yeah, this is very different than doing my Alex Jones voice.
I forgot that was one of your that was one of your takes. Oh my god, that was so funny. So we're talking about God of War today, and God of War is one of the most popular franchises of all time. It is still going on today. Just at the time of this recording, a new game had come out just last year. the time of it being released, it'll be 2 years because it would have come out in 2018. This was coming out in 2020. So little snapshot of when this is being recorded. But it was interesting to go back to see how the game that started the series, right? It was very interesting to see the differences. Now, granted, there's been more precedent for the old style of God of War than there has been for the new style, considering I never played Ascension, so I don't know if they gave you free control of the camera.
No, I don't.
In Ascension?
I don't think so. I none of the God of War games I've ever played were where you had control of the camera. There was always fixed camera.
Yeah.
Which in God of War 1 is a little wonky, and then 2 and 3 it's like perfected, but in the first one, like, we were just playing it for a little bit, and it's a lot better than I remember it being.
It works pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, we were playing the PS3 remake, so the HD upscale, so I don't know if they modified anything for it. They're usually the PS3 upscales. They usually don't. It's
like
usually
that's just a cosmetic thing, and not necessarily.
Oh, you could tell because when the cutscenes happen,
the cutscenes look good for their time.
I would argue it would probably look really good on the tube TV.
Oh yeah, you're probably right.
Because I could go. I'll go into a whole rant about that later on. But I guess to start this all off, though, what's your favorite thing, or what drew you to God of War in the first place? Is it just like it is a violent game? Was it the violence? Was
I'm
it
a very violent person?
Oh, super.
Well, what happened was that God of War 3 had come out on the PlayStation 3, and I don't know my logic for doing anything with how I determined for getting a video game.
That's a good way. I don't know my logic for anything.
I had no reason, but I had no reason to buy this game other than it was very popular, and I was kind of elitist about gaming, and I would look down on like button mashing games and like games like that. But there was something about the gameplay. I think it was the E3 that year that showed God of War 3, and I was like, this game looks crazy. Like, it just looks nuts. So I went out and bought it when it first came out, and I was like, wait a minute. I started it, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing or who these characters are.
Yeah.
So I stopped playing it immediately, and then went out and bought the first two, and that's when I started playing God of War, and I was like, this series is just fantastic. Like
the storytelling, everything.
The storytelling, and we were actually just talking about that before we started recording, of the fact that they created this mythological character of this god so well, and they fit him in extremely well within the constructs of Greek mythology.
Now, I did read somewhere that they were very loose with the Greek mythology, obviously because of Kratos, but like even like fitting him in, they basically said you can just be as loose or as like strict as you want with it. So I actually don't know I don't know Greek mythology all that well. Do you?
I'm not. I know some of it. Like I know some.
We
of the
should have gotten Pat on here. I know he's more of a Roman. He knows not Roman mythology, but he does know that as well. But like Roman history. But Pat probably would have been able to help us with that, Mr. History major. He has a master's right now, or he's
getting his doctorate.
He's getting his doctorate
in medieval history.
He's a smart dude.
Yeah, he is.
So, all right, so that's how you got into God of War.
Mm-hmm.
I got into it because it wasn't because of 3 actually. I just remembered when I started getting really into video game collecting, I was like, I never played this game before. I should really give it a shot. Bought the originals, but I also got the HD remakes, and we actually tried to play the originals before recording, and unfortunately my copy apparently doesn't work, so it's kind of frustrating. But we played the HD remake, and thankfully that worked. And I remember playing the first one, and like you, I was pleasantly surprised by how good it was, even for such a simplistic game where it's very button mashy. It's a hack and slash game.
Yeah.
It's like Dynasty Warriors with a stronger story.
Okay.
You ever play Dynasty Warriors?
No.
Oh my god.
I know of it, yeah.
Oh my gosh. At the point of this recording, I don't even know where this episode's going to fall in over the summer of PS2.
Yeah.
Where it's going to lie. But I should do a Dynasty Warriors episode. I totally didn't even think about that.
Add that to your list.
I should. So let's go through the story. Now, I know it's been a while since you played it, so I wrote down the story. And actually, I guess before we even dive into that, God of War, it was released on March 22nd, 2005. The director of the game is David Jaffe, and you might know him from some other stuff. He directed the Twisted Metal series.
Oh, nice.
For the PS1, yeah.
I had Twisted Metal for PS1.
And the developer was Sony Santa Monica, which it still is. They still develop the series. But so yeah, that's just some basic overview with it. Now, with the whole God of War series, the basically the premise is you play as Kratos, right? And he is trying to basically forget his past. He hates his past and he wants to forget it.
He wants to die all the time.
He does. I mean, that's how the game starts.
Yeah.
It has such a cool opening because on the main menu of the game, you just see Kratos' head and there's fire all behind it.
Yeah.
And it just says, like new game, continue, or whatever. And as soon as you hit start or you create a new game, it goes in and the camera just pans out right away and the fire goes away and you see Kratos standing right there. So they literally brought him into the cutscene. They started the cutscene with the menu is the beginning of the cutscene of the game, which I thought was a really cool, very immersive way to bring the player into the world.
It's very good direction.
And you see Kratos at the very beginning with him committing suicide. He's jumping off a cliff and he wants to kill himself. He says, "The gods have forsaken me." I wish I had a voice like that. Kratos' voice is so good.
Who was a voice actor? I was just looking him up.
It's changed a couple of times. I don't remember actually who the first guy is.
I just remember him screaming at Ares like the whole game. Is Ares.
Right?
He's always pissed off at Ares, who's the god of war in Greek mythology and in the game.
I'll look it up real quick. But so what happened? So he jumps off the cliff and then it flashes back to 3 weeks prior. And
we're saving ship.
Yeah,
from the Hydra
to the Leviathan.
Yeah,
and you're on like this boat and you have to stop the Leviathan. Now, as the game goes along, you see the flashbacks leading up to why he's doing what he's doing, meaning why he's doing what you're currently doing. So his backstory is that I've just looked it up. It is Christopher Judge is the current voice of God of War. The original one was Terrence C. Carson.
Okay.
And I don't know much about either of them. Though Christopher Judge, I want to say, was on Stargate SG-1. Yeah, he was on Stargate SG-1. He was on a lot of sci-fi stuff. Terrence Carson, he was in Final Destination 2, apparently.
Yeah, nice.
He was also in Living Single, which ran from 93 to 98. Living Large, he just liked living, apparently, in 1991.
Except for when he was Kratos, he wanted to kill himself.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, seriously. Terrence C. Carson is the voice of Kratos, at least for the first God of War game.
All the voice acting in the game is top notch. Because I was saying with the narrator, which I think we said was Hera or something like that.
Well, I think that's the god, but I don't know what the voice is.
Yeah, I don't know who she is, but all the voice acting in the game is top notch. Like, it's all fantastic.
It was so well done, and on top of that, that just adds to the immersion of it. You feel more connected because the voice acting is that much better.
Yeah.
So as you play through the game, you find out why Kratos is doing what he's doing throughout the elements of the game or the events of the game. So what happens is, like years prior, Kratos becomes a servant to Ares because he is basically he was a Spartan soldier and he was about to lose a battle and all of him and his men were about to die, and he pledged a blood oath to the god of war Ares, and to spare him and his men, and in return he will serve him forever. And Ares does that, and Kratos honors that blood oath. He wages war on behalf of Ares, he wages war on behalf of Ares, and Ares then leads him to this village of people who worship the god Athena, which is Ares' sister.
Yeah.
And it's a bunch of Athena worshippers. And so Kratos does what he's asked to by his blood oath. Unbeknownst to him, Ares sneaks in Kratos' wife and child, and he accidentally kills them in the fray. And the oracle, one of Athena's oracles from the village he just destroyed, curses Kratos by taking the ashes of his wife and child, his dead family, cursing and imbuing it into his skin, which is why he has that ashy skin.
Yeah.
And that also is where he gets the nickname the Ghost of Sparta.
Yes. Yes.
Which I mean, that's one that sucks. I feel for him, but two, what a badass origin story. Like
Yes.
his skin is imbued with the ashes of his wife and child. That's metal.
Yeah, that is metal. It's so. I think that's actually borrowed from Hercules.
Is it?
I think Hercules gets tricked into murdering his wife at some point.
I know very little about Greek mythology other than names.
Yeah,
and even that I don't know much about it.
I think that is borrowed from Hercules, but I don't know if he murders his children in that one. But it is an awesome thing because that's the thing that haunts him constantly.
For the rest of his life.
That's the only thing he wants to like
forget because he can't forgive himself for it. And so because of that he basically breaks his blood oath, which, spoiler, we find out that leads to the events of God of War Ascension, which came out like 4 games later.
Was it a PSP game?
It was a PS3.
Oh, it was a PS3.
So you have God of War, God of War 2, God of War 3, God of War Ascension, which are all the main console games. And then you also have God of War Ghosts of Sparta and God of War Chains of Olympus. Chains of Olympus came out before Ghosts of Sparta. And to be honest, I don't remember the story of either. I never played Ghosts of Sparta. I beat Chains of Olympus, and I don't remember that story.
Yeah, I don't remember them either.
But we're focusing on the original one either way, so I'm not too worried about it. And you said you remembered a little bit more God of War 2, right?
That was my favorite of the two PlayStation 2 God of War games.
I getcha. So he decides to serve other gods, and so that kind of brings him up, and that's 10 years. Like, he serves other gods for 10 years, basically trying to make amends for killing his wife and child, and that brings us up to the events of the current game of the original God of War. And so he's exploring through this, and I shouldn't say exploring, he's basically trying to get to Athens to meet with Athena, I guess, and on his way there, that's where the whole wreck ship thing is, and then Poseidon, the god of the ocean, asks him to kill the Leviathan because the Leviathan's been terrorizing the city, or terrorizing his oceans. And so Kratos agrees, does it, and basically the whole premise of the game, without going through the story beat by beat, is that he gets to Athens and he meets with Athena, and Athena says, you will be forgiven if you go kill my brother Ares for me. And that's the whole premise of God of War. Kratos has to go kill the brother of Athena, Ares, the man who you find out later on in the game. I guess, the whole thing's a spoiler alert already.
Yeah.
If you
don't want the spoilers, just...
Oh, it's too late.
Yeah.
Get fucked. No.
That's how you talk to your audience?
Yeah. They know I don't know. So that's the premise of the game, and it kind of goes all over the place, and eventually he does end up fighting Ares. And we'll get to the end in a little bit, but I guess the first thing I want to talk about, now that we kind of talked about the premise of the game and a little bit of the story, mainly the backstory is the most fascinating to me. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, I love the backstory. It sets him up. It sets Kratos up so well because the whole game, like before, you can tell that Kratos is kind of, he's pissed off. He's like a really great warrior, and then this sets it up like he's been betrayed. He's haunted. He's murdered his family. Like,
and he didn't want, and it was an accident. Like, he had no idea.
And but part of that, when I was watching a review for the game, he was losing his humanity. That's what Ares would wanted to make him into this great warrior. And over time, he was causing Kratos to lose his humanity to the point where he would kill anyone or anything for Ares. That's why when he goes into the village who worships Athena, he doesn't even check. He doesn't care who it is until it's too late, and then he notices that he had killed his wife and daughter.
Child. Yeah.
So Ares got what he wanted, and Kratos, in a way, got what he wanted too, was becoming the ultimate warrior. But now he's this haunted dude. The backstory's everything.
That's
Kratos.
very Greek. That fits in line with Greek mythology.
Yeah.
The tragic warrior, the man who won, or the man or person, whomever who wanted it all and sacrificed everything to get what they wanted, literally everything. And in the end, are they really happy? Type of thing. And obviously, no.
I feel like everything in Greek and Roman mythology is all about it's all cautionary tales against what you want and what you think you want and the things you have to do to get there. If you want to fly high like Icarus, you you can burn in this. You can burn in the sun, which actually, on a side tangent, people get that story all mixed up because I looked it up fairly recently, and people use Icarus as a metaphor of not flying, not being too ambitious. And they say, remember what happened to Icarus?
Yeah.
The part that people like to forget about Icarus is that part of the story is, well, you don't want to fly too low, otherwise you'll crash on the rocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the story is really, don't be so blinded by ambition that you burn yourself, right? Where you're like obsessive, but also don't just do nothing, like have it
crash into the rocks.
because you'll crash and die. And you won't end up have gotten anywhere. So really the story is have ambition, but keep it in perspective.
I like that. I did actually read that somewhat recently too.
Well, people, the stories end up getting all mixed up. Like the saying, blood is thicker than water.
Yeah.
The real saying is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. So the family you choose is more loyal than just the family that you have.
Into. Yeah.
So the true saying is very different from the one we've been given.
It's similar. It's so similar, but those slight differences change the entire definition of what it's supposed to mean.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy to think about, man. That's really cool, though.
Yeah. And there's like 3 or 4 other. One of the girls in my acting class was like telling was the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese or something like that.
What?
Yeah. So it's
the
like,
second mouse gets the cheese.
They're the mouse.
That should be a new podcast.
Yeah, right.
The second mouse gets the cheese. So, yeah, no, but Kratos is such a well-designed character because he fits so like we said 1,000 times, he fits so perfectly into the Greek pantheon of mythology, and I guess not the pantheon in the sense of the gods, but spoiler alert, he eventually does become the god of war.
Yeah. He also has this amazing character design, just like artistically, right? Because he's this big dude. If you've never seen him, he's this big dude, and he's got bald head, and he's got the goatee. He's got the sick tattoos.
He's got a scar on his face.
He's got a scar, something from like saving his brother from Ares or something like that.
I don't remember.
I forget. I saw it in that. I don't know if that's addressed in God of War 2, but he's got the tattoo that's across the left side of his face,
all over his body too.
Then it runs down his body. He's just this really badass looking dude. The structure of his weapons, like the chains of fate, was that what?
No, it's the oh my gosh, I wrote it down too, and I can't remember what, because Ares gives him the weapons to serve him, and I cannot remember what they are called.
Maybe I'll look it up.
It is oh my god, that's gonna drive me nuts.
Chains of Olympus, maybe? No, it's a Sword of Olympus.
No, yeah, it's not. It's the Chains of Chaos. Or no, Blades of Chaos.
Blades of Chaos.
That's what it is.
That's it.
So Kratos is an awesome character. And I want to ask you, because you played God of War 3. I have not actually.
Oh.
I've heard from friends that all the redeemable aspects that you can I can understand why he's so mad at the gods in the first 2 games just kind of goes away in the third one, and you don't really feel bad for him anymore. He's just killing gods for the sake of killing gods at that point. Did you get that vibe?
I love Kratos so much as a character that I don't think I just wanted to keep smashing people up. And in not to spoil every other God of War game, but I think at the end of God of War 2, Zeus fucks over Kratos really bad, right?
Does he?
Doesn't he? He stabs him and he kills him.
I didn't play God of War 2.
Yeah.
I got about halfway through God of War 2. It's on my I'm playing so many games for the summer of PS2, I might add this to my list after the fact.
Well, by the time you get around to it, you won't remember that I said that.
I hope so.
But there's so many great things about it, and really the God of War 3 is not just him, because he was also working with the Titans to take down the gods. And so Kratos' goal is to not only destroy the gods and Zeus specifically, but it's to destroy the Titans as well.
He just wants to destroy the entire Greek mythology.
And that's the thing about it, about Kratos. He's the Blades of Chaos. He is an agent of chaos. That's his thing. Like, nothing will stand in his way. He literally is the god of war,
I can't wait for you to play the new God of War game, man. Because after you've seen all this stuff, I can't wait for you to see the character changes that they take, like in a good way.
Just to see, just from what I've seen, where he's not just pissed off the entire time, and he's like has a softer heart, is crazy to see. Because in the third one, he is just strictly pissed off, like
just pure anger,
whole game. And like, I guess if you're not into that, it can be a bit tiresome.
I haven't played it. I just was curious, like, if he kind of wears out his welcome, in the sense where, do you really feel compassionate anymore? Like, did all of this really need to happen when really it was only Ares that dicked him over in the first place? But then I don't also, like you said, Zeus dicks him over.
Yeah, like you find out that like all the gods and all the Titans are kind of working against him. I think even Athena, I think, lies to him at some point or tricks him, and
let's segue into that. So at the end of this game, once again, spoiler alert, spoilers to hell and back. But at the end of this game, you do end up you end up killing Ares, like we said.
Become this monstrously large version of Kratos.
Yeah, it's a big, like almost like a mech fight from like an anime or something, but it's Kratos versus Ares. And so you defeat Ares, and Athena says, you're forgiven, but we can't erase the nightmare. So she doesn't lie to you, but it's kind of a lie. It's a lie of omission, because Kratos is expecting the nightmares to go away, and Athena says, like, we can't take it from, we can't take this from you. And that's where then it brings it up to the spot where you see at the beginning of the game where Kratos is ready to jump off a cliff, and right at the bottom, Athena yoinks him out from that, doesn't let him die, and says, "You're the God of War now."
Yeah.
And that's how the first game ends, with Kratos literally becoming the God of War. Kind of something he didn't want, in a sense, but it's kind of been forced upon him. I mean, maybe he likes it, but
I know you want to keep this mostly to the
we
first
can talk.
one,
We can talk
in the
a little
second
bit.
one, he's a very passive god of being the God of War. He's just like, go out and destroy these villages, and whatever, because he's seen as being on his throne. He's got these like concubines around him and stuff like that. And at one point, he's just like, no, like, this is not good enough. And then he starts leading the wars that are going on out there.
Yeah.
So I don't think he actually likes being a god. I think he enjoys war, but really wants his family back,
and he'll never get that back,
and he won't. So he's dramatically unhappy.
It's a good way to describe it. He's dramatically unhappy.
Yes.
So let's talk about, let's go into depth with the gameplay. There's actually, like, the gameplay is simple, so there might not be too much to talk about it overall.
Yeah.
But the gameplay is very simplistic, like I just said, but it's super intuitive. You were saying, like, when you were playing it, it's like it was not hard to pick up again at all.
No, you barely even need the tutorial. It's really, I mean, the fight mechanics they tell you, hit triangle or hit circle, and you'll grab a guy and rip him in half, and then when you get into what are they called when they put the triangle and square up
quick time events.
Events,
they were calling it a mini game.
Yeah, mini games.
When a button prompt shows up, hit that button to start playing the mini game, and I go, it's a quick time event. It's not a mini game.
Well, the nice thing that God of War does, and I've seen in other games where they didn't do it quite as well, is that in God of War they actually give you enough time between seeing what you're supposed to press, and that way when you press it, you can actually see what's going on, instead of like circle instead of having to hit it in like a really quick sequence where you can't see at all what's going on. This one, they want you to see it like cinematically, to see like, oh, he's ripping the Hydra this way, and then he's going in, and then you jump and you're in the air for a bit, and then you're ripping the Hydra's eye out or something like that. I didn't even think
about that. You're right. A lot of games focus on making that too challenging, but when QuickTime events are probably used best, it's for the cinematic portions of it. It's not
because it's
for
an ultra slow motion. Like,
I didn't even think about that. And the game hits that cinematic style perfectly.
Absolutely.
There's certain games that kind of overdo it a little bit, or they try too hard. I'm thinking like later Call of Duties try to be way too cinematic. And the first Modern Warfare nailed that cinematic aesthetic perfectly, but then the later ones just kind of, it felt overdone. It felt the best way I can describe it is that they did what Naughty Dog did, but worse. So what Naughty Dog does with their game, with Uncharted specifically, is they design set pieces. They're like
you're playing a movie.
They figure out set pieces first before they even figure out the story.
Yeah.
So they figure out beat by beat what set pieces they want, and then they're like, all right, well, how can we make a story work around that?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it works really well. Uncharted 1 and 2, for example. I mentioned this on the Uncharted episodes last year at this point in time of recording. It's still this year, but it's so weird to record so far in advance. But in Uncharted 3, it didn't work because it completely disjointed the story. They had this really cool idea for a capsized ocean liner platforming level, and they couldn't find a way to make it work into the story, so they just kind of found some... Like, if you take out that whole level and the story elements of that, it doesn't change anything.
They just shoehorned it in there.
They shoehorned it in. And it's an awesome area, but it doesn't work well. And a lot of games that go for that cinematic feel, they fall into that trap of creating set pieces and only focusing on the set pieces and not a good way to bring the story together into those set pieces. And the original God of War does it really, really well. They have really good set pieces.
We had talked about that when we were playing it, is that when you can see with perspective, like you can't go into a first person mode. The camera's set, obviously, but we could see the game as it was going to unfold. Like at one point, you're climbing up onto the top, like the mast of the ship, and you can see the save point that's like way in the distance
where you're going to next.
Exactly. It's almost like a Wes Anderson thing, like in cinematic way, where you can actually see the depth of the scene that's in front of you.
Yeah.
And you have to you could actually scope out and see like, oh, I'm going to have to fight those people up there. Like they're already loaded and on the screen, but you're not going to get there for another 10 minutes possibly, you know?
That's crazy. I didn't even think about that.
And you can see the save point, like, oh, I definitely need to stay alive enough, and that's where my save point is, so I know where I can get to.
See the light at the end of the tunnel. Almost.
Yeah, it's not like it's just like, oh, you're like exhausted from playing, and then like, oh, thank God, here's a save point, and then I can hopefully get through, or those save points are random or something like that.
That's really cool to think about, because a lot of like generally movies that do that are generally considered that's good cinematography or that's good. I wouldn't say directing, because directing is like directing the actors specifically, but it's good design in general, whether it's cinematography or game design or whatever. And I always think it's really well done when games can foreshadow, but without being too obvious. Mm-hmm. And I mean, a very simple way is what God of War is doing. You know, you just have it on in the background.
Yeah.
You ever play BioShock?
Yeah, I love BioShock.
Massive fucking spoiler for BioShock. So if you don't want to hear a spoiler for BioShock, tune out for like the next like 2 seconds. But like the would you rather thing, that sets you up for the entire game. Spoiler over. I try to keep it to 2 seconds. Yes. So that sets it up for the entire game where you don't see what's coming. I mean, that's very clever and well done foreshadowing. But even on a smaller scale, just basic level foreshadowing of knowing what you're going to have to do next.
Yeah.
And they do this in games too. If you play games a lot and you go to an area, suddenly you're walking down a hallway and suddenly you open up to a big room and there's chest-high walls conveniently everywhere.
Yeah.
You're probably going to go into a gunfight in a second. Like, you know it's coming. So that's odd because it's a little bit of foreshadowing. I would say that's actually bad foreshadowing in a sense.
Yeah, it's the first Red Dead Revolver for PlayStation 2. That game's kind of it's fun, but it's a mess. Definitely not like the Red Dead Redemption games.
Yeah, I never play. I actually just beat Red Dead Redemption earlier this year for the first time. Yeah.
Did you ever play Red Dead Revolver?
No.
It's like a comic book. It's
really?
like a very comic-y. It's not grounded and like realistic like
I kind of like
Redemption. It's very goofy. Like people are like rolling barrels of dynamite down the hill and go get that, kind of thing where but the camera's like all over the place. I sort of forget where I was going with that. But the one thing I was going to say about the cinematic element is that like God of War did such a good job with the story mode and making you care about Kratos and like the things he was going through. and then they tacked on the expert cinematic look
Yeah.
on top of that. It wasn't the other way around necessarily. Like
They were focused on the character, versus the cutscene or versus the set pieces. And I would even say that to kind of go along with how good they are at the design aspect is when you were playing, when I was watching you play, there's a lot of moments where it shocked you, like when you're walking down the hallway and the Leviathan head juts out, and it scares the shit out of you.
And you even warned me about that. You were like, "Oh, he's going to come up," because you just played it.
But it just comes out of nowhere. And that's really, it keeps the players on their toes. And just in general, it's just a very fun aspect, like a very fun set piece to play through. This whole broken ship, this broken graveyard of ships, and you're having to traverse through this graveyard of ships to get to the Leviathan. And the way you kill the Leviathan is fucking badass.
Yeah,
you impale him.
Yeah,
all 3 heads of him
with the mask. And then the thing that I love about the all 3 games that I played is that you do things like this, and it's set up super early. Is that you kill this thing, and then you have to go get the key. You actually have to go down the throat of this Hydra Leviathan.
Make it feel like it's real. It's scale.
And you have to go into the thing, right? You walk down this thing's throat, which is just that's a very God of War thing, to be inside something, inside someone kind of thing. Like that happens a lot more than you'd think.
And some of the other set pieces that we only got to replay a little. Both of us have beaten the game, so we just kind of replayed a little bit of it just to get it reacclimated with the controls.
I mean,
and
I haven't
the
played
story.
the game in 5 years, but it was still very fresh and good for me in that way.
What I was going to say was they have you kind of going all over the place with some of the, in a good way, like in terms of not set pieces, but locations that you go to. Because after the ship graveyard, you then go to Athens and you fight your way through Athens. I was going to say Ashens, and you meet this weird, what is it? He's a grave digger, and he meets him in Athens, and him and Athena kind of inform you. Actually, Athena informs you how you like to kill Ares. You need more power. You don't have what it takes right now. And so then they direct you to Pandora's box, and you have to open Pandora's box and get the power needed to defeat Ares. And when you get there, you're going through your God of War puzzles are actually pretty fun. I don't remember anyone specifically off the top of my head.
Oh yeah, there's tons of puzzles in the game where you're moving things. You got to pull a lever, then get to a different lever, or you got to like rotate things in order to get to like it's like an elevator or something like that. There's tons of puzzles that aren't frustrating,
and they're just well done especially because in action games you don't always expect puzzles, but that varies up the gameplay enough so it doesn't feel monotonous or tedious in any way.
Especially a game that's so hectic and brutal like God of War is, to have like puzzles thrown in there is very unexpected.
So to get Pandora's box, I just looked it up real quick. He goes to the Desert of Lost Souls, and then
isn't he carrying like is it Cypherus that's out there carrying the giant thing on his back?
It is Kronos, one of the Titans.
Yes.
One of the Titans is carrying the temple that you have to get Pandora's box out of on his back, which is just such a cool idea.
It's so
that
cool.
Just builds the world so well, and. Yeah, so you have to go to that temple, and that's where you're going to get Pandora's box. And right when you get it, Ares snatches it away from you and flings Kratos down into the depths of Hades, or depths of hell, pretty much. And Kratos, once again, has to fight back out because, like we said before, in God of War Ascension, he gets thrown in there once before because he breaks the blood oath to Ares after Ares betrayed him and made him kill his family.
You go to Hades again in God of War 3.
Man, he just can't get enough of it.
Kratos dies like 12 times in these games, and you can't get rid of him.
That's one thing that's always been cool to me about Greek mythology, that they always act like hell is whenever you hear like people within the realms of their world, going to Hades is the worst possible thing.
Yeah.
But every time you hear a story, there's always some motherfucker getting out again.
Well, I think I forget who it is who in Greek mythology. I don't know if it's Hercules again or someone, but Hades is like accessible. Like you can hire a shaman more or less kind of thing, and they'll lead you to the door to Hades in a way, or like the portal to it. Like
That's weird.
It's accessible. You don't actually have to die to get there. Like
You can just go to Hades.
yeah, like on a vacation or something like that. If you felt like it, surf down the river Styx or something like
That's
that.
crazy. Surf down the. It's another. Oh, that's actually a band, Styx. But
Yeah.
and they're named after that river too, right?
Yeah, I
Because they
think
spell
so,
it
'cause it's
STYX. Right?
yeah, it's spelled the
not
same
just
way.
the normal way. But I always just thought that was weird. Like Hades was such an interesting concept in Greek mythology because unlike Christianity, where when you go to hell, you're done. Like
Yeah.
you're there. But in Greek mythology, and even I think when they go to Norse mythology in the newest God of War, you can find a way to get back from their version of hell. I forget what it is in
Yeah, I forget.
in Norse mythology. Norse mythology has a lot of crazy stuff in it too, which is fascinating. But I don't know anything.
I know a lot less about that. But it is extremely interesting. I have a YouTube thing pulled up just like because I was looking up the God of War stuff, and it's like, oh, here's all these things like the story of Odin. I have loaded on my computer, and I'm like, I got to get to that at some point.
I need to watch. Like mythologies in general are just super fascinating. I think that's one of the reasons people gravitated to God of War so much is because it does a good job of making the myths feel real,
Yeah.
and not in a cheesy way. It doesn't ever feel forced. It just feels it's in a weird sense, it's their attempt at historical fiction, but it's more mythological fiction, if that made sense. It's not part of the actual myths, but they are adding a companion piece to it type of thing, or maybe changing some minor things here and there.
Which is interesting because the every movie that has to do with Greek mythology or anything like that, they always suck. Like
I heard the original what is it, Gods of Mount whatever you
you
know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. They made a remake
recently,
that
and it was apparently really bad.
I saw the remake in 3D and it was
one of the worst.
absolutely atrocious. Liam Neeson plays like God, I don't even know. It's but apparently the original is pretty good, but I know they keep trying to make Hercules movies and they always suck. And usually those Greek mythology movies are just awful.
It's going to bother me. It's Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans, yeah.
I could not think of the name. And then
Yeah.
they made Wrath of the Titans in 2012, which was awful from what I've heard. So let's move on and talk about the music. I mean, there's not any specific pieces in here that stand out to me in terms of, if I heard it in a crowd, I'd be like, oh my God, that's God of War.
No, you wouldn't. It's a very like Gregorian chant kind of.
But it's really well done. It fits.
It's very creepy a lot of times, or it's intense.
I do remember. So after watching some of the replays of it, going back to it, I would watch the person play on the long play and remember the music almost in PTSD flashbacks, though, because it's not necessarily that it was like the section was difficult, but remember hearing it and remembering back and remembering that I was sick of that specific track. So I have a bit of a fear that the soundtrack isn't as good as I remember it being. But though when we were playing it, listening back to it again, it's good. It's really good. It's serviceable. It doesn't have a strong melody. It's not something that you're going to be able to pick out from just on.
It's not the Halo theme.
It's not the Halo
like
theme or the Uncharted theme or Metal Gear Solid even.
Or
you ever play Shovel Knight?
No.
Oh, after we're done recording, I'm gonna play some music from that for you. I think you'd like it. It's one of the best soundtracks I've ever had experienced on a video game. So yeah, the music itself is really good. It serves the game perfectly.
It's pretty simple.
And it just does what it needs to do.
There's voices and strings.
Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about with the game? We've covered the gameplay, we've covered the story, basic overview of the story. We haven't gone into a level by level thing, but we also didn't play the whole game again.
No,
but some of the levels that they do have are the Aegean Sea, which is where we started. That's what we saw. Gates of Athens, Road to Athens, Athens Town Square, Rooftops of Athens. Those are all individual levels. So that's all leading up to you meeting Athena. And then you go to the Temple of the Oracle, which is where I think you actually meet Athena and you talk to one of the Athenian oracles. Sewers of Athens, I'm assuming you have to get out that way.
I remember there's one part in the game where you have to swim a ton.
It sounds like it'd be the Sewers of Athens.
I think you have to get
anything.
Poseidon's trident or something like that, and it takes for fucking ever because the swim mechanics in this game are atrocious.
We didn't even talk about that. I forgot.
They're
like watching him swim is one of the most painful things. I also don't like the balancing mechanics that they make you do pretty frequently.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times, especially because you can't adjust the camera, so
I
you're
think that's
forced,
the big thing. Yeah.
And thankfully they acknowledge that it's difficult to do, and they give you basically if you hit X right as you fall, he'll catch and then climb back up. So I think that's actually pretty well done.
But the swim mechanics are so bad, and I think if you're underwater too long, Kratos will drown. But to breach and get air is like next to impossible because you'll hit whatever circle or something like that to get out, or X to get out, and he'll just like float to the top, and he won't actually breach and grab air, and you'll just die. And it's like, well, I can't swim from point A to point Z with just one breath. And then I don't know if it was just the one that I had, maybe it was a glitch in the game, or if it was just because I couldn't even when in the first level there's a section where you can swim for a bit.
Just they treat it as a safety net pretty much because you have to walk across these planks, and it's supposed to give you like that section is supposed to be the tutorial section for you to, in a completely safe space with no pressure, how to navigate these planks that you have to walk across. So they give you the water to fall into, that way you don't die, and then you can go back up and try it again. You cheesed it a little bit though. You skipped the one section by jumping over it, and then you ran across and skipped the other section, so you never had to turn or anything, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's that's something that's probably like embedded into my muscle memory of playing the game because they have those kind of puzzles and balancing acts throughout the entire series. And like another thing that was really cool with the gameplay is that you'll notice like when we were what was it? What were the Hydra things called? The
Leviathan?
Leviathans. There's two small ones, and then there's the big boss. And so this happens a lot in God of War where you have to get the thing you're fighting to a certain level. And then you have to figure out what it is that you need to use to actually kill it. Because you'll fight them until they're dead, and then if you don't actually kill it with the thing, they'll just come back.
Which I think is kind of dumb. I feel like if you're able to wear them down to the end of their health bar, you should just be allowed to kill them the regular way.
They want you to have that brutal ending, though. Everything's about the ending of...
Yeah. Oh, I have no issue with that, but I feel like if they design... like, they made it too ambiguous. They should have made it seem very clear, like you can only beat him, beat whatever it is this way. Because there's sometimes where it's like you are right down to the edge and you're just going to town, and you, for some reason, their health just stops draining.
Yeah.
I'm not okay with that. If you make it so their health bar recharges if you don't do it correctly, and then it just keeps recharging and you never get any progress that way. It's
frustrating.
I'm more okay with that than the health bar just stopping. But
yeah.
Maybe I'm misremembering it, but I could have sworn like there was moments that if you weren't beating it the right way, you would... That sounds weird to say out of context.
Nice. Well, that's for a different podcast entirely.
Still 69. What? No, but if you aren't defeating the boss in the correct way that they want you to, then it just stops there. But I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
No, I think that's what that is what happened, and then you have to like do the quote unquote mini games or the turn based.
The mini game.
Yeah,
I can't get over that. It's a mini game.
You have to do that in their order. I guess another thing that we could talk about is just like the very creative ways that they have throughout the entire series of killing things, pretty much.
Morbid, but yeah, you're right.
Like you'll have these like harpies which come flying in. They're like these little demon-looking things with wings, and sometimes they have like tits and stuff like that. It's very weird. And in certain sections of the game, you actually have to use them as a puzzle. Right, where if you have to clear and traverse a certain section, you'll jump grab them with your chains, and then use them to fly to the different section. And if it dies before then, you'll fall and die as well. But if it dies and you jump off, you can grab another harpy and fly that through. And then you're like controlling these things in the air, right?
I forgot about that.
In other ones, I think it's in the third one, there's you'll fight random cyclopses and you'll run up it. And you can kill the cyclopses without doing this. But if you want to kill the cyclops the way that they're intended to be killed, you'll run up the cyclops, brutalize it, and then rip its eye out.
Oh my god.
And then there's another one that's coming to mind. If you have the three dogs,
Cerberus.
yeah. You'll fight it, and then what you can do is if you have like a massive crowd of enemies around you, is you can get on top of it and control it with the chains, and he'll just plow through all the people around you, and then you just go until he dies, and then you just cut off his head.
In general, their boss fights are very creative. They're always find really cool ways.
And those aren't even boss fights. Those are just like you'll run into two of those Cerberus like per level, or maybe like two or three or a Medusa where you got to cut her head off to kill her.
There's a really cool game design mechanic that I'm a fan of, where you will fight something once as a boss, and later on in the game it just becomes a regular enemy.
Yeah.
So it gives you this major challenge. It gives you a challenging enemy as a boss, and then they start introducing that enemy more frequently, so that way it doesn't become a challenge anymore. You are now more powerful because A, you have the knowledge of how you beat that previous enemy, and B, you are, in most games, you have more of something. Whether it's more weapons, you have more powerful weapons, or you have a better gear, or just something that gives the player more of an advantage. So the next time you fight them, you are armed with more than just the experience, or more than just new weapons. You're armed with the experience as well. And I'm a big fan of that tactic. BioShock, we talked about it before, does it with the Big Daddies, because the first Big Daddy is a major event. When you first fight a Big Daddy, it's fucking terrifying. And
it's like walking around stomping, and the whole screen's shifting. Yeah.
And then you later on in the game, you fight just drowning in Big Daddies.
Yeah.
There's just so many of them.
Could be a different podcast as
know,
well.
Right? Man, this is just this is a brainstorming session, just not any kind that we want.
I think that's a really smart thing to do. Plus, it makes the enemies in the game more interesting when it's just like random NPC, like computer generated villains.
Remember I talked about Dynasty Warriors before? That's pretty much Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah, where it's just the same villain over and over and over again, and then you get a boss battle. It's like, no, every single place, more or less, from what I remember, has a different type of enemy that's attacking you.
And even if it's the same type, it's never really used in the same way. Like, hell, even I know we keep talking about the Leviathan level because it's the one we played to kind of refresh ourselves. But you fight the same enemies you started the very beginning. The first enemies you fight are these Spartan-looking things, like these zombie Spartans, it looks like. And later on, you fight them again, but now you're climbing up the mesh cargo net, and now you have to fight them in a different way. You can't just let yourself swing wildly. You have to plan your attacks out a little bit more because they're coming from all different angles, and you can only swing in a handful of directions. And you have to time your swings correctly because it's not like you can just move around and dodge their attacks. You're stuck there on the mesh unless you want to fall down to the bottom and start all over again. And most likely, since it's a video game, have to fight them all over again.
Yeah.
So their enemy placement and the enemy variety is super well done. And even you were talking about the brutality earlier. That's kind of how we started off on this other part of the episode. The different ways you kill enemies is how we kind of started off. That you rip the guys in half, you tear the wings off harpies. You already said, you rip out the Cyclops' eye in the later games. I know that wasn't in this one.
Yeah, but as the game goes on, you get different weapons. I forget which weapons you get, but as the game goes on, it's almost like a Mortal Kombat kind of thing because you'll learn combinations, and then if you hit the combos right, you get a completely different kill set.
And I completely forgot. You also get powers in this game.
You also have powers, yeah.
You get the Leviathan shock thing or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
the
right off
Poseidon
the bat. Yeah.
electric. And then there's an upgrade feature where you collect these red orbs, and then when you get far enough, you can, like for the Poseidon shock thing. Initially,
Poseidon's Rage is what it's
Poseidon's
called.
Rage. What will happen is you activate it. And then like lightning bolts come down in a circle around you and pretty much hit everything around you. And then as you're able to collect the orbs, if you want to upgrade Poseidon's Rage, you can expand the circle, and that makes it so that you'll kill more enemies and it's more powerful.
And you also get other ones like Rage of the Gods, Medusa's Gaze, which turns enemies into stone, Zeus's Fury. One of the other one, I think the other weapon is the Blade of Artemis.
Yeah. In the Army of Hades, he'll just conjure like the randomized things, and they'll go and kill for you. But then if they're there still, you can just kill them. Like you kill everything in this game. If you want to kill anything, you can kill everything.
I mean, you killed a bunch of civilians to get some health.
Yeah, the one guy was just telling me something, and I was like, "Yep, you're dead."
Well, he was also standing in your way.
That's right.
That level, that specific spot was also frustrating. One of the early parts of the game in the Aegean Sea in the ship graveyard, you have to push this wooden crate up this side of the ship or across the deck of the ship while archers are shooting at you, which would be fine, but the archers can destroy the crate and then you have to start all over again.
Which is so frustrating.
And you can't hide behind the crate because they will eventually destroy it. So even if you don't take damage, you still have to start all over again.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is dodging the arrows enough so you can push it a little bit, or actually you can kick it so you can move it faster. But it was just so tedious and so not fun. And I remember the first time I played that ever. That was one of my rage moments. I was this close to rage quitting right then and there. I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. Why is this is unnecessarily difficult?
Yeah.
I do think that's a poor choice in game design because it's so different from everything else. And I understand they're trying to teach you like movement skills with objects, how to move blocks and stuff like that.
There's an easier
but if that's
way.
the case, don't have archers shooting at you while doing it. Just have players do that, and then maybe have players just be able to kick the box and move it farther enough quickly, and have it be a little bit complicated of a maze to get them used to the controls of moving those boxes. Then the next segment, maybe not immediately after, but at some point later on, then you add enemies into the mix where you have to protect the box while dodging archers, or protect the box while enemies show up and you have to run away so that way you're not accidentally destroying the box with your blades of chaos while they're swinging at you. There's so many different ways they could have done it, and it just it's fucking infuriating.
Like the other things took me like a minute or two. That one part took about 10 minutes just to push it across this. It's not a very long deck,
and that's with someone who's played the game before.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, you had to remember how to do it, but compared to everything else where you just picked it up, it was like riding a bike. This one was not very well done, and I don't remember too many other moments within the game that are like that because once again, unfortunately we're adults. We don't have the luxury to
I wish I could have played the game over again.
Through over and over and over again. I find what time I can, but it just I don't know if there's, and I know there was more moments in the game like that. I remember vaguely moments like that. I remember there was a couple times where I was getting so fucking pissed off.
I just remember dying swimming. That's what I remember. I hated that.
But I guess to kind of wrap all of this up, what I wanted to end with is, what's your final impression of the game? Like, where do you like? I mean, obviously we like this game; it's one of our favorites. Yeah. But in terms of like, what do you think it's? I hate to use the question like what do you think its legacy is? But what's your like kind of final impression, I guess, of the game?
I think it's like the perfect way to introduce someone to the genre of the button mashing or something like that, because it does such a good job of setting up the world that you exist in, and of Kratos and all that. If this game didn't have the story behind it, it would be good, right? Like the gameplay is amazing 100%. And everything, but if you didn't care about Kratos, you probably would stop playing, right? If you didn't care about continuing to the next level, it would not be as interesting. And I've done that with plenty of games where I was like, this gameplay is awesome. I just don't care, you know?
And now you have to either make the game silly enough where you won't care about the story, because if it's too self-serious and there's no story or the story isn't good, you lose interest generally faster. You have to have some other hook to bring the players in, because if it's not the story, it's got to be something else, because the gameplay is fine, but generally gameplay isn't always enough now. It needs to have a little bit of character with it. So perfect example, Shovel Knight, I was talking about before. It's a 2D side-scrolling platformer, mind you. It's a very good 2D side-scrolling platform, but what kind of makes the game even better is its character. It has goofy characters. It's got a very interesting and unique world that feels bigger than it actually is, and that's good world building, which kind of ties into story. You need to be able to create a world where the players can feel like there's more to it than there actually is, and that's good game design in a sense. Because anyone can tell a good story. Hell, there's a lot of games that have phenomenal stories and have shitty gameplay. And it all really, what it matters is what I've talked about this with one of my friends who is probably going to be on this series, this summer of PS2 series as well. But basically, what do you value more? Do you value gameplay or do you value story? For him, it's story. Story is one of the most important things for him. A game has to have a good story, or at least a story that he enjoys. So even if it's something stupid, something ridiculous, if it's funny, that's good. So,
I mean, my favorite games are always story heavy. So you have like Uncharted 2, The Last of Us, and my favorite series is Sly Cooper, because Sly Cooper is such a good character, and they do such a good job of setting that.
And while those stories aren't that phenomenal, I'm not saying they're bad. It's just that they're nothing to write home about.
But they give
the
you
world is so rich.
The worlds are rich. The characters are always like tangible in a way that makes you relate to them, which makes you want to see where their story goes, which helps you drive to actually play the game. A game that I could never get into was Assassin's Creed, right? Because in Assassin's Creed, the gameplay is always really good, and I never care about the story.
Did you ever play the second one?
I played the second one.
Everyone always tells, I have not personally played that one. Everyone tells me the second one is where it gets good. Like
the second one is really good, because the first one's awful because the story it's so phoned in, it's crazy. But in the second one, the story is really good, so it leads you to actually play the game. The game gets really repetitive and everything like that. So if you've played a Assassin's Creed game, you've more or less played them all, in my opinion. But even then, even in Assassin's Creed, like as the story keeps going, and like when I started playing the third one, I was like, I don't care anymore. Like once I stopped caring about the character, I stopped caring about the game entirely.
And you need that. You need
and
that.
even though the mechanics of the game are awesome, and even though the worlds look really great, and all that, when you have bad dialogue mixed with characters who are wooden and boring, I just don't care enough to play for 17 hours. Like now that I'm an adult,
depending on the game, like
exactly.
I've had this conversation with a lot of people about how. Are we really less patient than we used to be when we were like, how did we sit through all this shit when we were kids? And I don't think it's necessarily that we're less patient. It's just that we're less patient on things that don't matter in a sense. So video games we love, but in the grand scheme of things, video games don't matter all that much. So when we want to sit down and play it, we want to see progress. We want to be able to get through the game. So you don't want to sit around for an hour trying to figure out which pixel do I need to hit. And you'll give it the old, like if you're really trying, you'll give it the old college try. Then after like 30 minutes, you'll be like, all right, what do I have to do?
Like, where is this going exactly? But
exactly.
Not in the question of like in BioShock, which I think is a phenomenal game. It's one of my favorite games as well. In BioShock, they keep you on your toes. You're like, this world is fantastic. Everything is awesome. The weapons are great. But where is this going? Like it's inquisitive. Whereas in some other games, you're like, why am I playing this? where the fuck is this game going? And then you're just like, I'm done with this. Whereas in like a game like BioShock and a game like God of War, you just want to see you want to see where he's going. You like, why is Kratos so pissed off? Oh, there it is.
And like we told it at the top of the episode, but you don't know that until halfway through the game.
No. And another thing that God of War has going for it already has a built-in like badass factor of using Zeus and Ares and Hades and
so
Athena.
Even if Kratos wasn't in there, you would still have the mythical. It would seem more mystical because of the backdrop of Greek mythology.
And it's something that like people intellectually know about, but like us, we have like a very cursory knowledge, not like a very in-depth knowledge. So you can more or less like make up things because it can be as grand as you want. I think in the second game is one of my favorite moments of the whole series. You meet Icarus, who I had talked about before, and Icarus is this like crazy kid, kind of like he's not a kid, but he acts like
yeah.
And you go in and you have to get across this part, and Icarus is like, no, I'm the only one who can do it, and Kratos is like, no, I'm doing this. You just fucking rip Icarus's wings out of his back while he's falling. You let him fall into a volcano. It's one of the coolest things. And then you would just have Icarus's wings, so you can go and you can, when you double jump, the wings will go out if you have it attached.
It's
really cool, and
it's kind of fucked up but awesome at the same time.
There's so many good kills, but the Icarus one is awesome because you're fighting him in mid-flight.
Yeah,
which is cool.
Once again, making good set piece designs for story to be based around.
So that's what God of War did. It was those things. The gameplay is great, but the story and even the puzzles and the characters are all so well designed and so well thought out, and you can feel it that it just keeps you hooked. You have to see it through.
I'm with you on that. The God of War series, to me in general, it's one of the earliest games that I can remember. Oh, I shouldn't say I remember because I played it much later than everyone else, but it came out in 2005. So it's one of the earliest games to really nail a cinematic game, to nail that cinematic feel. And they do it in such a good way, in such a convincing way, that you want to, like you said, you want to see what happens to Kratos because the character's just badass. Like almost anybody looking at that would just think he's a badass. And some people went out like that. Some people don't like the whole muscle bound, like brooding character, which is overdone, to be fair. But when you get a character that does it well, you notice it. Otherwise, you end up with like Steven Seagal and shit like that.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things that had turned me off from playing it when it had come out, was that I thought it was like this ultra macho, like bullshitty thing, and then when you play it, it's that and a ton of fun. Like,
but he's a flawed character, though.
He's an incredibly flawed character.
He is
with depth.
Exactly, and so you see that on the surface level, but once you get into his personality, and I'm telling you, man, before you go tonight, I'm going to show you the new God of War because you're gonna love it. Once you get to know his character, it makes the game that much more interesting because on a surface level, Kratos is just like a frat boy. It seems like.
Yeah, he's like the guy who's like gets drunk and just wants to fight everyone.
Pretty much. Or no, you know what? He is the dude from Cobra Kai. I
haven't seen Cobra Kai.
From the original Karate Kid.
Yeah,
he's just aggro. He's just angry. Yeah. He's got to show it to everyone.
But when you find out what was going on with him and Ares, where he's progressively losing his humanity, this is the result of that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And this has nothing to do with what we were just talking about, but it's in God of War, and I wanted to mention it. There's, I think, in every single game of the God of War series, from the 3 that I've played, there's a part in it where you can get your life bar filled all the way up by having sex.
Oh yeah, there's a sex mini game.
So I just thought that was like hilarious, and
It's
you got to
so
throw it in
weird.
there.
It's well, from what I
The camera pans away, so you
Yeah.
can't see it. But
from what I know, it's also not necessarily a sex mini game. It's just kind of like on the side, because when you add interactive things with that, that's when it goes into the AO rating.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why what is it? Grand Theft Auto San Andreas had that whole hot coffee issue. You ever hear about that?
with the prostitute and stuff, or no?
No. So I mean, it might have been with a prostitute, but so in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, there was a part of the game that you could only get to through mods. You couldn't even get. It's not like you could just be playing the game and randomly stumble upon this. You had to modify the game. They just never took the data off the disc. And it was an interactive sex game called Hot Coffee, and it created a huge fuss because once people found out about it, parents were pissed. The ESRB was pissed because, which was their own fault for not inspecting the game. But at the same time, even if they would have played through the entire game, they wouldn't have.
You would have never gotten to that.
So
point.
it was a bit of a big stink because, I mean, it was overblown for the fact that your kids could literally not access it. Like you can't get to the hot coffee mini game at all. But it is on the disc somewhere, specifically the PS2 version, I believe. I think it was removed for the later ports.
Oh, okay. Because I don't. Grand Theft Auto was a strictly Sony game until fairly recently, right?
I mean, well, like I have San Andreas for the Xbox, the original Xbox.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I was wrong.
I mean, the original one I think was PC. You could play Grand Theft Auto 3 on the PC.
There was a Game Boy game for it too.
Yeah, it was chopped down. Or whatever.
Yeah, it sucked.
But all right. So God of War, I loved it. You loved it. It's a great game. We talked a lot about the intro levels or the first level, but like I said, there's a lot of the game takes you a lot of different places. And if you have not played this game, I definitely recommend it.
It's not even long. It's only like 12 hours. Or something like that.
It's a short. It's a comparatively compared to what most games are now.
2 and 3 are something in the 20s.
Which is that's a healthy. That's really long actually. But anyway, so Greg, thank you for joining me on this episode. Thank you for coming on to your first episode of Still Loading officially. Do you have anything you want to plug? Any social media things you want to plug or anything at all?
You can follow me on Instagram, bdawk511, like BDAWK 511 on Instagram.
And as usual, or anything else before I throw my plugs in there? I just want to make sure I didn't cut you off. That's all.
No, I mean I'm an actor, so any help, any followings do help because agents and stuff like that look at it, which they do. Is ridiculous.
No, it makes sense because I mean I get it to an extent because they can see what your following is, and like if you have a lot of followers on Instagram, that means that might go see your movies.
Yeah, because you can plug it on there. You can put the trailer on there.
It's instant advertising.
You can look up "Let's Have an Adventure" on Amazon. If you have Prime, you can watch it for free. That's the movie that I made.
I saw it and I liked it.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's a fun little movie.
And actually, our friend Alina, who was in it, who's your co-star, I was pleasantly surprised by her acting because I didn't know she acted at all.
She doesn't. She actually did that. She had said she wanted to do it to face anxiety issues, which I think is a great way of doing that. Acting's very therapeutic, so I thought that was brilliant on her end, and she did a great job.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. So yeah, go check out Let's Have an Adventure on Amazon Prime or buy it. That would be awesome too.
Either one, yeah.
So thank you all once again for listening. As usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. You could also reach out to me, on at StillLoadingContact@gmail.com. If you want to support the show and you want to help it grow, you can do a couple things. You could support me on Patreon. Even just $1 a month will help the show grow. Or you could just give me a rating and review, preferably a positive one, on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast listening service you use. It helps raise awareness for the show for people just searching for new ones. So yeah, that should do it for me. Also check out the network I'm a part of, the Podbeard Network. Go to podbeardnetwork.com to see all the different podcasts and YouTube shows that are on there. And that should do it. So Greg, thank you again.
Thank you.
And I will see you all next time.